Hi there, Glocal Citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I'm your host, Florence Agoo, and welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with Temistocles. He is a hip-hop artist and environmental justice activist. He is also the author of the stunning 250-plus page young audience graphic novel, Planeta Blu. He wrote this story to inspire the next generation of youth of color. He was born Temistocles, Ferreira, and I think I may have even gotten that pronunciation a little bit messed up, but it's a beautifully sounding name. And if you missed it in part 1 of the conversation, do a rewind because it's a beautiful name and it's very meaningful. So he is a multi-talented keynote speaker, astounding audiences with his unique blend of poetry, hip-hop music, and relevant social messages, which you got a little bit of a taste of in our conversation in part 1. So without any more delay, let's get back right into the conversation with Temistocles. So I feel like that my next question was my Glocal speak question.
Nice. Okay.
And this is where we want to hear what you hear. So I ask you to share a word, phrase, or saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and why or how you came to value it as Glocal speak. And I feel like that said a lot. But if you do have some more Glocal speak, please share.
Yeah. I mean, I always, and I loved, the first time I saw Glocal, I was like, did she mean? And I was like, oh no, I caught it right away. Think globally, act locally. This has always been a mantra of mine, because as a secret city representative, right? As you said, like a lot of people don't know about the brilliance of New Bedford. And honestly, you could probably go around and see, some of these other cities similar that are smaller, that maybe been overlooked, but New Bedford always realized, or at least a lot of people that were in my cohort, let's call it that way, we realized the power and the potential that we had within us. And so whenever I would travel to LA or back to Portugal or Austin or New Orleans, even though I was from New Bedford and not New York or whatever, like we knew like, hey, we have a voice, we have a lot to say. We're honoring our ancestors. And so although we're coming at it from a local perspective, it's very much global, and everything is local. As global as things are, it's very much local, right? And, a lot of times, some of my peers, we kind of like frown a little bit at or cringe a little bit when people are like, oh, that's a local artist. And I'm like, well, everyone's local, right? Like Biggie was local.
Has a place. Yeah.
Biggie was local for Brooklyn, right? And, and Tupac, you know what I mean? Was local for Oakland, you know what I mean? Or whoever it is, it's like, it's just the will and the drive that you have. And then if you can build up a movement, right? If there's enough people that are like, hey, we feel that spirit and we're going to, move in that spirit, that all of a sudden, a blip comes up. And so we always, wanted to put New Bedford on the map, knew that New Bedford was always on the map, whether it was from the Tavars, was another group that came out of New Bedford. They had that hit song, like a penny for your thoughts, a nickel for
your thoughts.
Right? And a bunch of Cape Verdean guys who, just came up. But the reality is that, we're all local. I like to think of it independent, right? As an independent artist doing my thing, but keeping in mind the world. And we have to, at this point, we know that the world is really as big as she is. She's really that small also. And so everything that we do, we have to keep in mind how it's going to ripple out across the globe. And so that's always in my consciousness at my forefront, because I want life to continue. I have 4 children. I want them to have many children, and 7 generations and beyond is the goal, right? And so we keep that in mind. And I think, to answer that question, like I came out of the barbershop after putting out, one of my hip hop songs called Dilemma from Estrella Negra. And this little black girl, Cape Verdean girl, came up to me with his mom. She's shy, but I want you to let you know that she knows your whole verse of this song. And she do the whole thing, but she's like, like the sunshine, I blind in this rhyme. Mine's refined because I took time in mind. 22 and true to this. My lips enlist truth to gift, uplift. And she went on like to do the whole verse. And I remember in the middle, I'm like, did I swear in this? Did I say anything? This was like very early in my career. And it made me realize, man, like I can't I can, but I choose not to going forward, do anything that's going to be a detriment. At least, not everything that I've written has been positive, but it's always
Hmm.
been conscious, right? It's always
Yeah.
been in the spirit of fighting for the life and the liberation of our people. And
Right.
so, yeah, that's at that local and global level. So think
Okay.
locally, act
Okay.
global.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
now let's talk about how you put spoken words to the paper. So
Yeah.
you have a new project, which you were very
Yes.
successful at running a Kickstarter campaign. So I want to talk a little about that. Tell us about Planeta Blue, the
Yeah.
rise of Agoo.
Yeah, Planeta Blu, Rise of Agoo is my debut album. Debut album. Woo! Yeah, that was a while back. Debut graphic novel. I got it
Mhm.
right here. There's a hardcover and a soft cover.
Nice.
252 pages. Took me 5 years to write, and it really was a labor of love because during the whole time, there was another side of me that's like, you gotta write some rhymes, put out another
Mm.
album. And people are like, when's the new
Mhm.
album? And I'm like, I'm working on this because it never let go of me. It came from telling bedtime stories to my kids and just
Mhm.
making and freestyling these stories. Always knew that I was, a storyteller through music, but also knew that I could visualize these fantastic, oftentimes, sci-fi, Afrofuturistic, super fantastic superhero stories. And so when I was telling these stories to my children, they seemed to get a lot of joy out of them. And I just, said like, you know what, I'm gonna write the story. And initially the lead was going to be about Tume Cabral, who's still in it, named after Milka Cabral. But then, thinking 5, 6 years ago, realized that, we needed some Shiros in the storytelling. And so
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
Afro Latina sister emerged because although I'm not Puerto Rican myself, I grew up with a lot of Puerto Ricans. My wife is Puerto Rican. My daughter's half Puerto Rican and West African. And I knew characters like Angel over here, who's her brother. Had a lot of youth like Angel who were far from being angels, right? And anybody who knows Angel as someone named Angel, they're not usually not angels. They're very mischievous and I wouldn't say bad kids, but sometimes they do bad things. Let's put it that way. And Laris, who was named off of Grito de Lares, which is a town in Puerto Rico, which had an uprising and a revolt in the 1800s, and were the only time that Puerto Rico was actually independent, and it only lasted
Mm.
for close to a day, some hours. And so Laris is the lead. And then we also have Tyler, who's based loosely off of a childhood friend, Tyler, who immigrated, but moved from Indiana and really shared another great artist, but shared stories about having been from Indiana and his town being a sundown town for many years, right? Where
Mm.
there was a strong KKK
Mhm.
influence in that town. And so these characters were characters that are dear to my heart, people who I know, youth that I know. And the beginning starts right in the south end of New Bedford in the near future in 2029. And it's really the story of these young people as they're just having a regular day, intelligent young kids. They're talented and gifted in the summer program, and they did just there doing a scavenger hunt. And then the sky just cracks in front of them, and this toxic fumes comes down, an apocalyptic attack by this guy Xander, who's an oil tycoon billionaire turned evil world conqueror. And as this thing starts falling, some of the kids who are not on in the water actually start coughing. And then in the corner of their eye, they see what they think is shark's fins, and they get swept under the water. And when they come to and they look, it's actually dolphins. And it's a dolphin tribe has been sent to rescue them. And they're bringing them to this council meeting that's happening in the underwater city of Atlantis. And they have to represent the human race. Laris is being called because of her lineage
Mm.
to represent the human race as the animals are being judging whether they're going to kill off the rest of the human population that survives this
Sure.
apocalyptic attack by Xander. So you can think maybe like the Hunger Games meets
Yeah.
Narnia, or maybe even the Jungle Book meets Harry Potter. So there's a lot of magic involved in it
Ah.
and some superheroism as they gain powers from the animals and the power of Agoo. So that's a little bit of the story. But it's really, the intention is for young people to see
Mhm.
themselves represented. As we know, representation matters. As we know,
Mhm.
young people, we're all inspired by stories. And I wanted to create the story, an Afrofuturistic story that tells some of the histories.
Yeah.
We'll tap into like the Middle Passage. We'll go to South Africa,
Mm.
and then
Mhm.
we'll go to Colorado, back to Colorado, and with the help of animals and some Native American folks of the Utes tribe, the tribe that Utah is named off of. They really go after Xander and try to stop him from unleashing more devastation. It's the first book of a trilogy, and
Nice.
so far, it's so good. The people who are reading it, young people and elders alike, parents and people who love the YA, it's for young audiences
Yeah.
genre. They've been really excited about it, and I'm excited that they're excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm from Colorado. I grew up in Colorado.
Really? All right.
So
Awesome.
so
So,
and it
call,
is
yeah,
on my gift list for my godsons and things like that. So I'm really excited to
nice.
share that and so you have this idea and you visualized it, you've been imagining, you've telling me stories. So then how do you make it a reality in terms of getting it published and making it become this material reality? How
Man.
did you make that happen?
Yeah, some of the steps, and I tell people this all the time, is first of all, just start, right? And so I just started writing, and it was thankfully such a freeing, fluid process. I just
Mhm.
needed to find the space, right? So I even had to, the later parts of, getting close to finishing, I would even rent a hotel room close by to my house,
Mm.
right? In the next town over, nothing lavish, nothing expensive, maybe even
Yeah,
a hole in the wall. And I'm
sure.
sitting in there just writing, just so I could get away from the daily life
Sure.
that sometimes beckons us to cook meals or,
Yeah. Yeah,
go
yeah.
drop off the kid, drop off my daughter at daycare. So I just started writing, and I knew it was important to actually write in a notebook because I don't type
Mm.
as
Mhm.
fast. So I would just write it down, and
Mhm.
then I would transcribe it in using my phone. I would
Okay.
just dictate it. So I found
Ah, good. Yeah.
different apps, and then I would just kind of talk it in. Still would
Mhm.
have to go through and revise and find where the errors are because that wasn't always perfect. But at
Mhm.
least I was getting through the chapters. At least I was writing and getting to the end. And I had a great mentor and a great opportunity one time to go to this author's retreat at Knoll Farm in Vermont as an activist. People
Mhm.
were like, hey, you should come and do this retreat. And I was like, thankfully, gladly, I'll go and spend some time in the rolling hills and the knolls of Vermont. And then I got invited again to as an author. And so that's where this guy, Peter Forbes, I had a session with him, and he just said, do you know how it ends? And I was like,
Mhm.
actually, I do know how this story ends. And that was important, and
Mhm.
anybody who's writing a story, find the ending,
Yeah.
because then it's
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
But it's easier to kind of connect those dots. Like, how do we get here? I knew that they had to go to Colorado because that's where NORAD is
Yeah.
located.
Yeah.
Maybe not, right? But it's where NORAD is. And I knew that Xander, this evil dude, was going to use nuclear weapons or threaten to use nuclear weapons. And I was like, okay, we're going to go there, but we got to go to Africa at some point. You know what I mean? So I was able to connect these dots that I could visually see, just close my eyes, and almost like a movie, just kind of transcribe these visions that were coming to me
Mhm.
in my imagination. And also, I think from the ether, anyone who's an artist knows that sometimes if you're on the right place, and I call it touching source, right? Return to the source.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
feel like, this story needed to be told. And because it's a story of the earth living on, and the story of water, right? Water is life, and connecting all these powerful messages that we've been told by our ancestors, telling this adventure, these young people. And, not to give any spoilers, but it's not a tragedy, right? We win. It's important. It's important that we win, y'all. And so, not without sacrifice, as we know, and
Yeah.
not without, a lot of struggle, but we get through it. We have to win, what I
Yeah.
mean, in order for life
Yeah.
to continue. And so once I wrote the long form, I started pitching it to publishers, and there were a couple of independent publishers that were interested, but they wanted the long form. And
Okay.
I was like, yeah, but no, I want this to be a graphic novel. And so serendipitously, someone introduced me to an artist that is also in the area, local, right?
Mhm.
At the time, I was living in Hadley and he was living in Hadley, and we got introduced. And this person was like, "Hey, my neighbor is a great artist." And I was like, I don't know. Can you send me, do you have something I could see? And she sent me the
Sure.
link to his website, and it was Mike Lariccia's website. And I was blown away. I was like, I think this might be the guy.
Yeah.
And so we met up, and very like-minded, family guy, loved hip hop and reggae and dance hall. And so we hit it off. And I started with a concept art. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, I could
Mm-hmm.
do some concept art. I could do the cover for you. And let's see where it goes from, what it leads to." And so I was like, sure. And I had to finance that. I was just like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I believe in this dream. I'm going to pay up the money. And that's another, and I bring that up only to say that sometimes people are afraid and they want
Yeah.
things to be free. And it's like, no, honor this other person, bring
Mm-hmm.
people in, pay them
Mm-hmm.
what they're worth. Even if you don't have the exact, like what they're worth, at least say like, hey, this is what I have. Can you do it for this? And most times, if people believe in the project too, they'll get behind it. And I was
Mm-hmm.
surprised, at the price. Don't tell him this, but when he came back with, I could do all of this for this much, I was like, yes, let's do it. Like, really? That's a steal, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so eventually, in written form, it was about 115 pages. He
Okay.
said, I was like, Mike, are you willing to do the whole book? And he was like, let me look at it. He's like, yeah, I'm willing to do it. I can storyboard it and go through it. This is how much I'll charge you. And it's in the thousands, right? I don't want to give the whole,
Sure.
how the whole figure is, but it's in the thousands. And I was like, hey, I have family. First of all, I have a job, right? I
Mm-hmm.
work,
Mm-hmm.
I do my music. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm willing to invest my money, but I know a lot of other people who have money that don't know what to do with their money,
Sure.
right? We know
Yep.
people like that, right? And whatever, people can do what they want to do, but sometimes they're like, really? That you spent how much on those sneakers or how much on that, whatever? You know what I'm saying? So I reached out to my network and so started doing some fundraising just within as far as looking for investors. And then Mike was actually the one who said, hey, what about Kickstarter? Should we, let's do a Kickstarter campaign? And I was like, I don't know anything about that. I've never done any of that for any of my albums. If you think this would, he's like, I think so, man. And so we took the time, and that's the other thing I'll say for anyone, look, we took
Mm-hmm.
at least a couple of months, if not maybe 3 months, just getting all the assets ready,
The
getting,
plan.
lining
Yep.
everything up,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we could successfully reach the goal of $10,000 was what we were looking to reach, to just, kind of print the books was the idea.
Mm-hmm.
It costs more than that, just once again, just to be
Mm-hmm.
transparent with folks.
Mm-hmm.
But anything else, I think people need to understand, if you believe in your dream, don't be afraid to take out a loan. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to put your
Mm-hmm.
money where your mouth is. Most times, we're in the nonprofit, like, oh, we can get a grant. That's cool. But,
Mm-hmm.
grants come with strings attached. And for me, I
Mm-hmm.
wanted this to be independent. I'm like, I'm going to finance it. I'm going to also get this Kickstarter and I'm going to make it happen. And I'm so happy with the quality. For those
Mm-hmm.
that,
It's
can
gorgeous.
go online
Yeah.
and see it, the colors pop, quality
Mm-hmm.
good. It smells so good. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Those of us
Mm-hmm.
who
Mm-hmm.
like books and the smell of
Yeah.
books,
Yeah.
and anyone who holds this, I'm really confident in the product that anyone that holds this in their hands, they will see the price tag, which is $30 at the back of it, and say, yeah, it's worth it because it's quality. And,
Sure.
and it's going to empower my young person or myself to continue this life-giving force through art and music
Nice.
and graphic novels. So
Yeah, it's a gorgeous book, folks. And obviously in the show notes, it's going to be on there. But the website is Planeta Blu, planet with an A and BLU without an E.
yes,
And so I love that. I love it. So, in terms of now marketing and distribution of the book,
yeah,
Comic Con,
yes.
where else?
Yeah. So, I mean, so first of all, one thing is we ended up self-publishing, right?
Sure.
Independent publishing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's Aura's Legacy. So that's my daughter's name. And it's to
Oh.
leave the legacy
Mhm.
for her and my other sons, I, Soldier, and Rasta, for them to continue if they choose to with the company, right? So
Sure.
we're thinking long-term in that way. And
Sure.
then, yeah, to your point about Comic-Con is to get it out there, right? So not only through social media, but whenever there's a conference. And
Mm-hmm.
Omicron, right, to rhyme with Comic Con, is
Yeah.
really dampering, and just COVID in general, a lot
Yeah.
of these abilities to get out there in person. However, we did have a very successful showing in Providence, Rhode Island. They had a Comic Con in Providence, and it was
Oh,
so
good.
well received. Yeah, people loved it. People were taking pictures with us. We were actually in what we call cosplay, right? So there's a character
Okay.
in
Yeah.
here, Angel, who's wearing kind of a Bruce Lee inspired sweatsuit, and it's yellow and black there. And
Okay.
so myself, my son, and Mike and my other son were all in these outfits that were came right out of the book that had
Yeah.
Planeta Blue in the front and Xander's logo in the back, because it was kind of like the bad guy kind of thing that Angel had to go and if had to take. And if you read the book, you'll understand why we had
Okay.
this. But people like, for those that are familiar with The Boys, which is a comic book and also a series on Prime Video, The Boys, a couple of the characters were there and they were like, what's up with these sweatsuits? And they were so interested in the sweatsuits and the book, and I gave A Train and also the guy who goes by Mother's Milk. And I'm sorry for not knowing their actual actor names, but
Mm.
two men of color. They were like so, and you can tell when people are just kind of like, oh yeah, that's nice. Because I had some other people that did that, right,
Yeah.
at Comic-Con, but they were like, wow, this is so amazing. This is what I want to do, right? So people who are established and doing big things. So we shared contacts. I gave him the book. And so we're really confident at this because of here we are, an independent publisher with an independent title that no one's heard of, but the young people are telling their parents, like, I want it. People are looking at it, whether they're Latino or of color, they're like, I want this for my godson or my nephew or for myself because I love post-apocalyptic adventures.
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
people who are like, oh, there's a climate, environmental edge to it. I want it. Or just like, wow, that art is phenomenal and
Mhm.
amazing. I want it, right? And so we sold many books, really happy at the amount of books we sold and how excited people were to meet us and get the books in their hands. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's so exciting. So,
Yeah. Thanks.
again, in the show notes. So, speaking of how people are receiving it and thinking about the content, I'd like to ask you my mindset hack question. And
Okay.
so, we want to know, what is your favorite or an innovative mindset hack? And this is one that you can imagine or one that you know of.
Mindset hack.
Mhm.
The thing that just comes to mind off the top is DIY.
Okay.
Do it yourself,
Yes.
right? Do it
Yes.
yourself. Do what you can yourself, right? And that was part of me even before reaching out to Mike. I'm a visual artist too. So I started drawing it. I started
Mhm.
creating the imagery and speaking into existence this reality that this is going to be a Netflix series or a movie, right? And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
speaking it into existence, speaking the dream, knowing that when this becomes a movie, that the youth of New Bedford have to have opportunities and access to either voicing over if it's an animated or if it's a feature film, like to actually audition for the role, right?
Right.
Knowing that this is the intention around this book and that this helps to hopefully connect people to nature, connect people to life. So speaking, right? Speaking into existence, into the reality, what you want to manifest, right? I know that I'm a co-creator of this reality. I know that I wouldn't be here if my parents didn't think of this name Temistocles and want me to be an orator, right? Because that's who Temistocles was. Besides being a general, he also was a speaker, like a senator and an
Mm.
orator. So yeah, do it yourself by speaking it into existence and doing as much as you can yourself, putting your energy, your vibration into what everything that you do, I think is important.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. So I'm at this partly to kind of understand what some of your inspirations are, but I always ask this question. So the you that's not the working person and not the and even partially part of the working person, because I'm interested in your inspiration in terms of
Yeah.
things that you've read that
Mhm.
have contributed. So what are some of your favorite reads and listens and watches?
So yeah, I mean, the autobiography of Malcolm X is
Mm.
just really changed my life when I read it as a senior in high school, and then also Spawn, which is a comic book by Image
Ah.
Comics. Yeah, because and that's what when I realized representation matters because the main character is a black military guy. His best friend was black. His wife was black. His daughter was black. So it wasn't this once again tokenism. It was just the story about this guy trying to redeem himself because he was a mercenary, if you will, for the government for so many years, and then a superhero. And so that was just a powerful story to see myself, but also Image branched out off of Marvel Comics. So Marvel and DC, you think of the top two big comic book
Yeah.
companies, but then there's Image and then there's Dark Horse, right? And so a lot of independent companies branched out off of that. And so there's a blueprint there for it. And
Mm.
so I love a lot of Star Wars. I love a lot of Marvel
Mhm.
stuff. So the original Star Wars, right, go way back. And my father, one of the only times we went to the movies, I probably went to the movies like 3 times, but the very first time was to see the release of Star Wars. And I became a fan of that and believing in this world far, far away, in the
Yeah.
galaxy far, far away, long time ago, right? So this kind of like play with time and space is really profound. But right now I'm watching even like C, an Apple, Lost
Is
in
C as in the
Space.
ocean or C as in the
C as
letter?
a SEE. It's another post-apocalyptic
Okay.
adventure with Momoa. I forget his first name, but the guy who plays Aquaman in DC
Okay.
world. But he's kind of world where in the future people have lost the ability to see, and there's only
Ah.
a few kids that are starting now to be born with the power of sight. And so there's this whole world
Mm.
where people are just using their ears to navigate the world. But here's these new kids who are of color. And I think maybe that's a connection that I really gravitate to. And they're trying to navigate this world where people with sight are seen as witches. And so they're usually killed
Mm.
or burned at the stake, like days have passed, right? And so that's a really cool series that's out there. But I also listen to a lot of books on tape. I'm actually been listening to Ram Dass is a
Mm.
great
Mhm.
spiritual leader who's really fun. I love when the gurus, if you will, are also funny. And so he has a lot
Mhm.
of great jokes in the middle of his teachings, but also Thich Nhat Hanh is a great inspiration of mine,
Oh,
which is a Vietnamese
yeah.
teacher who's still alive. And I'm glad I got a chance to see him and read his books. He has a
Yeah.
lot of profound stories. Another book I love to share with folks is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And he also has Beyond Fear. I think that one really hit me
Mm.
as someone who has a warrior spirit to go beyond this understanding of what fear is and what it does to us and how it feeds other energies out there. And for someone with an imagination like mine, even if I don't respond to a lot of the hard religious teachings, the spiritual message is very, very evident there. And it has definitely liberated my being to be more of a fearless person. So Beyond Fear is awesome. And then as far
Okay.
as music, yeah, Kendrick. I mean, I still listen to the classics as far as Tribe Called Quest, De La
Yeah.
Soul, Bob Marley, especially during the pandemic. Oh man, I was like, Marley is is
Right.
always at my core, along with a bunch of, if it's not hip hop for me, then it's reggae or
Mhm.
Cape Verdean music. Or there's so much. I always try to let people know, especially with music, let's not be lazy. I'm from a generation where we had to go find it, right?
Right.
And
Right, 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 right.
nowadays people are like, oh, what is it? It's like what people share or what bubbles up at their feed is what they're going to. But it's like, fine, there's a lot of great artists out there, y'all, that are doing a lot of good music. You just gotta reach out to them, whether it's Chachi Carvalho from Providence, Rhode Island, See the Light, or your very own Tem Bless. Go check him out. There's a song called Blessed Unknown featuring Nako Bear from Medicine for the People, who's indigenous and Puerto Rican brother from Hawaii. We did a
Ah,
remix called Blessed
Hawaii. I like
Unknown,
that.
yeah. And that song, a lot of people seem to like because there's a spiritual edge to it, along with just rhyming and beatboxing. So,
Cool. Cool, 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 cool. When you mentioned that the series C, and my mind immediately went to Blindness by Jose Saramago and the Portuguese connection in that.
uh-huh.
So yeah, I
Well,
just
yeah.
thought of it like because that concept, a society where sight is gone and what happens and
Yeah.
how do you what is
Oh,
it a commentary on and how humans adapt or not adapt. So
yeah. Oh, totally. And I think we're so blinded by materialism and consumerism nowadays that that's why we can't even see our way out of this pandemic,
right.
and if you will. I mean, it's very complicated, and not to make light of it or any
Mhm.
way. I caught it myself, and luckily it was mild. But the reality that, like, what is the lesson? through this challenge and struggle, because we seem to be wanting to rush back to,
The same.
the
Mm-hmm.
same, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the same was killing us, back to normal,
Mm-hmm.
killing us and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people. So let's really sit with ourselves. And I say this to myself also, so not trying to preach to anyone, but even in my kind of rush to, like, I got to get out to the Comic Cons and I got to get this book out there.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what?
yeah, yeah.
All in due time,
Exactly.
and when the time comes, we always do stuff with the intention that it's for generations in the future.
Yeah.
So even if, even if I don't get my roses, and I'm glad I'm getting some roses now, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but we know that there's artists that it's only after their physical is gone that now
Sure.
their works really kind of come. Even Bob Marley, right? To mention
Yeah.
one that,
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
his time, people were like, yeah, he's good, and he did achieve, not to misconstrue that he reached a level of greatness even while he was alive, but it wasn't until he passed that people really saw his brilliance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even MLK too, right? I mean, at the time
Mm-hmm.
of his passing, people weren't feeling him because he was anti-war, and that was
Mm-hmm.
a very risky place to be. People were looking at him as irrelevant, but thankfully, his message still lives on today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the visionaries that we have to then see forward, most definitely. And we are going to count you as one of those in the present.
Oh, man.
Thank you so much for blessing us with your time, your thoughts, your insights. I really, really, really appreciate it. I can't say enough. I'm just happy to see people seeing a vision, seeing it, making it happen. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It's my
So
pleasure.
before we go, do you have any last words for our listeners?
Oh man, yeah. Be the soldier for love, general for peace, wage
Mm.
love in the streets. Yeah, just do that, man. Just do anything that can be healing. Is, I think, the answer in this time is just put out medicine, y'all. Put out as much medicine as you can, because we definitely are dealing with a sick society. So as much as you can to explore inner space
Mhm,
is
mhm.
important. So meditation, I believe in that also, and
Yes,
so, and I find
yes.
a lot of comfort in that. So, if you can find time to be still and ground yourself and listen to, your inner voice, is so important now more than
Yeah,
ever.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. Put out medicine. That's a good one too. Put out
Yes, put
medicine.
out
Yes.
medicine.
And
Yeah,
and and I like that you linked it with meditation. The meds are part of the whole part of it. Yeah,
yeah,
lovely.
yeah.
All right,
Great.
listeners, you have been listening to another episode of Glocal Citizens. You can catch us each and every Tuesday with a new episode at www.glocalcitizenspod.com and wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, check out the show notes because you can find 10 Blessed, all the great people and personalities and content that we talked about during the conversation. I'm just very happy. I was taking vigorous notes because you get really good show notes this time, folks. So please check out the website, but you can also catch us wherever you get your podcast. So if you're on Spotify, if you're on Apple, if you're on Amazon, check it out, and other places, but check it out. So until next time, bye for now.